Welcome from the Deer and Deer Hunting headquarters for another episode of Deer Talk Now. I'm Dan Schmidt along with Brad Rux. Brad, it is October 11th. I'm thinking about deer hunting. It's cold out there. I don't know what we're doing in this office right now, but I'd rather be in a tree stand.
The weather is absolutely perfect. The amount of sign out there is just insane. I mean, there's rubs, big rubs everywhere. There's scrapes already. We were out there youth hunting this weekend, saw tons and tons of bucks. I mean, the deer definitely on their feet. They're trying to push the does. The does have no tolerance of them. They just try to run to the other end of the food plot. If you're out there, if you see more than one buck, more than likely they're going to be sparring. I mean, we saw tons of sparring. Unfortunately for me and my little guy that's 12, and hopefully he never watches this, ended up missing a couple of them. So he missed a really good 6-point and a 9-point, and we probably didn't shoot at the biggest one because he's waiting for a better shot.
Oh, hey, you guys got some action. I had my daughter out there. Taylor's 10, and it was her first time hunting. It was fun, but as I told you, she was more interested in the snacks and the cherry Pepsi and sleeping on Dad's shoulder, but that was a lot of fun. You know, I was bow hunting last week, and one thing that you mentioned that I thought about was I had 2 young bucks sparring in front of me, and that gets you excited because you know things are starting a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, they're starting to try to determine the pecking order, which everybody says goes around year round, but you know, I've noticed a big shift in my deer already. I was just telling you earlier today, we had a 2-year-old that's already a mile from where he was in velvet. I had all kinds of photos of that deer, and my property split, so as a GPS, I know pretty much from area to area where one camera is to the other one, and we had tons of pictures of this 8-point 2-year-old in velvet's real identifiable, tight little rack, you know, but he's real tall. And now he's down by our pond, which, you know, and it's funny because as soon as he went hardhorn, we didn't get any more images of that deer. And now the bucks that we're getting pictures of are different back there. So they're starting to move, they're starting to disperse, especially the 1.5-year-olds. I mean, if you're in an area that has a lot of 2-year-olds, it seems like they push those 1.5-year-olds out very, very quickly.
It's a good point that you make, you know, and we publicize this a lot over the years in the magazine, but it depends upon where you live. But those bucks will normally disperse twice. Once when they're a buck fawn, and once when they're entering their yearling year, and then as a 2.5. Good example there, that deer moved 2 miles, yeah, which isn't too uncommon. I mean, even if you have good habitat, these deer are going to, you know, juxtapose for position, just like turkeys, pecking order, and deer herd. They could be a mile away, they could be 2 miles away, they could be 5 miles away. It really depends on that individual deer, on your densities, and a lot of things. We're going to talk about that a lot today. Our special guest is Steve Bartilla. Steve's been with us before. You know Steve, I know Steve. Steve's one of the best big buck hunters that we know in North America. He travels all over the place. He really knows deer behavior. He really knows this time of year to a T. You know, early season hunting as you're, you know, transitioning into that pre-rut.
He is a master stand placement. That's where I was last week. If anybody remembers, I wasn't here last week. I was actually down in Illinois hunting with Steve. And when you're sitting in spots, you know, I always find myself, oh, why'd he place it here? And some of them are obvious, you know, that anybody would do. But then there's the spot that I hunted on the last night and froze my butt off when that cold front came in, by the way. I mean, at first look, you know, you think about, well, 9 out of 10 guys would probably hang their tree stand down on the other end. Most of the deer enter over there. Why wasn't the stand over there? Because it's off a hill. You're going to hit swirling winds. You know, have a big thicket behind you that definitely deer could be bedded in there. It'd blow that whole area out. You know, it'd be a high impact hunt if you sat on the other end. Where we were, I mean, at the end, 2 mature bucks came out. One was a stud. I mean, he's, I guess 160 is where I'd put him at.
What a deer.
Easily, yeah. And he was eating out in the food plot, and we waited till it got pitch black, shot down the tree as quiet as possible. It ended up, the tree was hung like right off a ditch bank, went down the ditch and made our way out without any kind of impact. The last time I glanced down through my glasses, that deer was still out in the food plot on the other end, and we were already down on the ground and ready to slip down in that creek bed. You know, so in getting in, we came in from a different access point. He just sets that stuff up so well. Now, all that said, I was there to try to shoot a pocket full of does, and I came home with a pocket full of doe tags.
And we're going to let Steve tell his story, but he did not come home with a pocket full of doe tags. He burned some of those doe tags. I'm not going to let any more out of the bag than that. Let's talk about what we got going on today. We have, first of all, a lot of questions. Thanks, everybody, for submitting questions. And a special shout out to somebody we both know through the magazine, through the website, Ryan Bauer, Minnesota. Ryan's getting married this Saturday.
Oh, congratulations.
And he sent us a question. This is his last Deer Talk Now question as a bachelor, so he's going to get top honors.
All right.
Way to go, Ryan. Congratulations. Smart move having it in the middle of October because you can always have those anniversaries and not worry about missing out too much hunting. Okay, shopdeerhunting.com today. Lots of great sales. We have more Smokies in stock. We begged Smoky, pleaded with him. They bottled up some more. We have it on the site. You can get it right now. Right now is the time to be thinking about making mock scrapes. This is the pre-orbital lure. You can't get it anywhere else. If you mention Deer Talk, whether you're entering it in the promo code on the website or you're calling the toll-free number there on your screen, you're going to get 10% off of Smokies pre-orbital lure. Also, a coup here, and I know, Brad, you worked on this too. We have Smokies interdigital buck lure just in the store. Don't even have a bottle. Just came in the store today. This is a really special lure too. This is bottled from an individual mature buck. Each bottle is from an individual buck. You only use 6 or 10 drops of this stuff. You don't need a lot. You drop it right into the scrape. And I have not used this yet. From the reports I've been hearing from the hunters out there, it's absolutely fantastic. When a buck hits that, he goes wild because he thinks there's another mature buck working that area.
This time of year is absolutely perfect, at least up here in the Midwest, which I haven't been out of the Midwest hunting, but there are scrapes and rubs every place. So it is time, if you want to get your trail cameras out there, it's time to grab a bottle of Smokies, head out to the woods and get ready.
And you can actually get both bottles. There's a special going on there. Lots of other things to talk about. Can cookers, we have more of these in stock. These are the special Deer and Deer Hunting branded can cookers. See if I get that turned right. You can see the logo on there. We have these made up specially for DDH. Can cookers, you open this thing up, you put your meat, your vegetables in there. It's got a nice seal on there, gasket seal. You close that thing up, and any heat source, could be a stove, could be a grill, you could be doing this outside. You're gonna cook an entire meal for your entire camp in less than an hour. Very cool, very nice thing to have at deer camp. We have those, we have the Bark River knives. The Bark River knives are handmade knives in Upper Michigan. This is going to be something you're going to pass down to your kids and their kids. It's a handmade knife. This isn't cheap production made quality. This is the real deal. If you have never used a handmade knife, you got to check these things out. It's a screaming deal. You can get them all sorts of colors, orange, blue, whatever you want, customized. We have those. You can get the discount on those as well. And also, if you buy $50 worth, which you would do if you bought a can cooker, we're going to send you a free copy of DDH TV. This is season 7. There's 11 episodes on there. You're going to watch this all fall. It's one of I think it was our best season ever.
It was one of the best for sure.
Yeah. We're working on season 8 now, but this is season 7. You're going to get a free copy of that DVD with a $50 purchase today. Also, last product, and one of the most exciting products, we not only have the fawn mama calls, we have the real mama calls in the store right now. These are the Woodswise calls. It's the newest thing. I've used this. I've killed a Pope and Young buck with this call. I really, really like them. It's not an aggressive call. It's more of a call to get deer to notice and come on over for a look. And this could be does, bucks, whatever. It's a great call. Check them out. We have them both. We have the fawn, and we're going to have Jerry Peters on again next week, and he's going to tell us more about these tactics using these calls.
The beauty of that call is, it's basically making a fawn call, and does are gravitate to that. And this time of year, I just told you those bucks, every time a doe would hit the food plot, they would be over on her. It's no different than that call. They hear that call, they think a doe is going to go over there, so therefore they're checking it out as well.
They're checking it out. It's really cool. When I used this call for the first time, Jerry came out, he sent me a prototype. This was a couple years ago, and he said, Dan, just try this. I think you'll like it. And I was sitting up in my stand, and you know me, I'm not big on calls. I use a grunt call. I'm not much on being aggressive. And I saw a really nice buck. He's about 80 yards away, and he's going up the ridge. And I'm like, oh, man, hey, I'm going to pull out this call. And I just called out, and little mama like that, did like 2 or 3 of them. He stopped, looked, and he came with his ears back and came straight to the tree. And nice. I killed him at about a 15-yard shot. It was awesome. But I won't leave home with without one of these now. I love that call. Enough of that. Tons of great stuff. Smokies. Can't wait to get. I got a new cutty back I'm going to put on my next mock scrape tomorrow, actually. So I can't wait to try that out. We have lots of questions. Steve's going to be calling us here pretty soon.
I got one for you.
But why don't you start off with one here, Brad?
It is from Michael Wooten from West Virginia, and he says, at what point during the pre-rut do you start calling, and do you use a deviate or a grunt call?
It's a good call, and I just about good question. I just about answered it there. I will call, and I'm different than a lot of guys. You read a lot of stories. There's guys that I would say are much more advanced callers than I am. But what I use is I use that call when I see deer. I never call blind, not during the pre-rut. And I will use that. I will use like a fawn bleat or a doe grunt, kind of that mama type call. And I'll just do it when I'm bow hunting and that deer is, I know he's way out of bow range, 60, well, more than that, 70, 80, 90 yards. And he's not, you know, he's kind of casual, and I'll call. And if I can get his attention, I might call again. That's one thing Mark Drury taught me, you know, call, get their attention, call again, and put the call away. Yeah. And that's what I'll do. And I don't know, I mean, if that's your tactic or not, Brad, but that's the approach I've taken. It's worked for me.
Yeah, same thing. Even during the rut, I really don't call blindly. I know a lot of people have. A lot of people have good luck. I do use my rattle and antlers, you know, and that kind of thing, and get pretty aggressive at times. And if you're going to do that, normally the peak time is early morning. That first, you know, basically when it just gets light enough where you can shoot, that's when I'm hammering horns together. Because you don't want to start out earlier than that. It comes in and it's too dark to shoot. And literally the bucks are, it seems like they're the most aggressive that first half an hour or that last half an hour. I'm not going to say it doesn't work the rest of the time, but 9 times out of 10, that's when they're most aggressive. But I do it exactly like you do. You know, I use a little bit of doe bleats this time of year. I really don't use a grunt call. I'll use rattling antlers this time of year, but I'm not hitting them hard. I'm just lightly tickling them together because you're seeing these bucks spar all the time, and a lot of times you'll get one's interest. And it's not uncommon if you're in an area with high deer densities, you get 2 little bucks, fighting, sparring out there a little bit. More bucks just keep showing up, and that's already happened to us one day this year. So
that's exactly what happened to me last week. There was 2 young bucks, just like you're watching here, lightly sparring, and they did that for half an hour.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't, and when you watch deer like that and you study deer behavior, it's a little tickle. They stop. They maybe eat a little bit, come back, and they'll face off, and they're sizing each other up. They're trying to determine their, their order in the herd, and that's a good tactic. I don't do that on public land. I've hunted a lot of public land over the years. I very seldom use antlers on public land just because everybody does it. Those deer are already on high wire, alert. A call, different thing, especially when that deer is relaxed. I mean, if they're on alert, you kind of got to pick and choose your spots when you're hunting pressured deer like that. So it's something for me, anyways. It's always been like a learning curve. Take that deer's temperature, as they say. Take his temperature. See if you can get that deer to respond to you. And if they do, all you need to do is get a response, and they're going to know exactly. Brian and I were talking about this last week. They're going to know where you are, and they're going to come straight to that tree. If they know where that sound is kind of coming from, they know exactly where that sound's coming from.
Yeah.
There was another question we had last week. Guy said, you're hunting in tree stands. Can't they pinpoint that sound is up there? Absolutely they can if they're close enough. But if they're far enough away, they got great hearing, but it's not, their ears are listening for all sorts of things. And if you only get their attention, they're going to know the precise area, but they're not going to know you're 25 feet up in a tree.
It always amazes me, you talk about blind calling and how many times you can be up and you're hanging in a tree stand. You saw a lot of activity in the morning. You're going to drop down, pull that stand off, move it 50 yards over, and you're hanging the stand, you're banging it. You have all of the intentions of the world hunting that 4 days from now. And right when you sit down in the stand and, overlooking what you've just done, boom, there he comes right through. I'm sure it's because they think that there's a fight or something's going on. They're coming to check it out. It happens time and time again.
Yeah. The other thing too, when I've gotten aggressive is there's good places to rattle, and we know that. Illinois is a good place to rattle. Texas seems like a good place to rattle. Any place that's got a good buck to doe ratio that's pretty even.
Yeah.
And mature deer. You got to have mature deer in there too. You can call in some younger deer. Like you said, they're going to be curious, they're going to come to it, but what I found too is there is that window that gets to be, I don't want to say foolproof, but as you get into November, there's Steve right now, and we're going to talk to him about it. We'll try to finish that thought here in a second. This is Deer Talk Now. This has to be Steve on the line.
It sure is, Dan. How you doing, man?
Good, Steve. How are you?
I'm good. Real good.
Well, thanks for joining us this morning. I got Brad with us here. We got some just gorgeous photos of you from about 20 years ago on the screen right now, just so you know that.
Uh-oh.
And I've told everybody how you gar-holed me in the stands that I couldn't shoot any antlerless, and then the minute I left, went up in a tree and killed all kinds of them.
Well, Brad, you know, you can lead a horse to water, but I couldn't make you drink. I tried. I have limitations, you know.
I know. So what's the activity been like since we left with that cold front?
Oh, it is. Well, actually, the activity wasn't bad while you were there.
No, true.
Now we're talking
really,
southern Illinois.
Yeah, Brown County.
Central Illinois.
Yeah, West Central. Hey, heck, I was thinking about it after you guys left, and how many nights? Actually, you kind of did get gar-holed, because everybody else was seeing all sorts of stuff all the time.
Steve, I mentioned this, and you got to tell this story because I thought it was great. But just to preface everyone, Steve manages helps manage a track of several thousand acres down there in Illinois. And Steve, you had an incredible night 2 nights ago.
Oh yeah, it was Sunday night. It was
Sunday night. Yep.
I'll tell you what, it was something I won't forget for a long time. Before I tell the story, all the deer, every single deer I shot was recovered, and every single deer will be utilized. Yeah. Now, the problem with the property down there is it went for 4 years without being hunted, for all intents and purposes. I mean, I think in a 4-year time period, there were 4 or 5 bucks taken off of it, not a single doe. And that might sound like a good thing to most people. You know, you don't hunt a property, oh, you stockpile deer, blah, blah, blah. I mean, oh, geez, the buck racks you're going to have. Actually, about the worst thing you can do to a property is not hunt it. You know, what ends up happening is deer populations explode, and there's some variables in this that make it even worse here. But anyway, the deer population exploded, and you know, you end up getting a bunch of 130-inch, 6.5, 7.5-year-old 8-points that dominate the place. So one of the biggest challenges I faced, which is a awesome challenge to have, don't get me wrong, on this property was getting the doe numbers down. So that there's a very legitimate need, and nothing was wasted. But no, I shot. Dan knows the story because I know how much he loves rolling does. I was texting him when I was up in the tree. I shot five does that night.
It was pretty incredible. I was getting texts, and I was living vicariously through Steve's phone there. But
well, it starts out, you send Dan one text, 1 doe down. Good job. You know, 2 does down. Wow, great. Keep it going. 3 does down. Wow. And by the time I got to 4, I can't even repeat the text because he was swearing like a drunken sailor. But I'll tell you, the one thing you guys realize this, and hopefully most people listening do, I very rarely do infomercials. Those Rage 2.3 extremes, wow, they're not even fair.
Yeah.
They're insane. I have to second that because we talked about it last week on the show. I mean, how far you made perfect shots on 4 of those. And
well, no, so the first 3 were actually my toughest shots, and they were textbook. I would have killed them with a field point. But then the 4th one, I literally rushed the shot. You know, it's like I was just so excited that I was gonna shoot the 4th that for some reason, and it was so easy. I mean, there it was, 30 yards broadside. It was actually sniffing a branch I stuck in the ground at 30 yards that morning, just so I wouldn't have to think. You know, it was sniffing it perfectly broadside. I rushed it. I gut shot her. Pure 100% gut shot. I heard that thing topple over in approximately 10 minutes.
Wow.
All it did was take a slow walk away. I, saw it enter the woods, and I said right about 10 minutes, maybe even a minute or 2 sooner, I heard it fall and do the kick. Now, that impressed me. And then the next one when I was shooting, it spun a little bit. There was a squeak in the tree stand, my own fault, obviously. I put up the stand, but a squeak in the stand. It spun a little bit when I shot. I ended up going straight through the liver, out the guts. I have never seen. I mean, obviously, you liver shoot a deer. You're going to end up having a good blood trail.
Yeah.
I have never in my life seen an arrow so soaked in blood. And that thing actually died in less than 75 yards running.
Wow.
That's a testament to a good product, is what it is. I mean,
at that point, I was just, I couldn't believe it. And I'd shot a doe earlier, but she was textbook. And, so I've killed six of them with those 2.3s so far. But those last two, they sold me. I've never seen so, and I can stick my entire hand in the hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. I mean, it's a great product. Way to go, Stephen. And to emphasize what you're doing here. No, everybody can't do that. We'll live vicariously through you. I mean, this is deer management textbook style, and also, you brought up some good points. You brought up the point about. A lot of people, and you actually we actually had an article on this. You cannot stockpile bucks, and you can't, because you can't stockpile game animals anywhere like that, because deer in their nature disperse. Bucks will get into that pecking order, so to speak, and you might have some rack bucks that most guys would be happy with, but not if you're trying to do this intensively. Take over the herd. Densities raised, you have to do that type of management, number one. Number two, all that meat is being utilized. You're not just shooting these things like rats.
You're 100. I ended up, all of these deer, it looks like are going to end up going, they're actually hanging in a meat locker right now, but all of them, it looks like they're going to end up going to individuals that desperately need the meat. The ones, my goal is actually to take 50 does off the place. And I'll end up taking a good share of them myself. Most of them from here on out will either be going directly into my freezer, or Illinois has a fantastic Feed the Hungry program where all you do is register them, fill out a little paperwork, and you take them into one of the donation stations. Does not cost the hunter a cent. And it ends up going to needy families. And for heaven's sakes, people that are listening from Illinois, Wisconsin's got a great program like that too. Take advantage of it.
Yeah, a lot of states do. Virginia actually started that, and that's the thing. If you have the property, you're privileged to be able to hunt like that. You say, "Oh, what am I going to do with it?" You can find somebody to take a deer off your hands.
Yeah.
Well,
if it's not a friend or family member, you got these state programs that are going to help you out.
And you know what? You mentioned privileged a couple times, and I couldn't agree more. But frankly, the reason that I think that I know I am so unbelievably blessed is that I get to experience it all. This place down there is a dream. I mean, it is an absolute dream to try to work on turning a place like that around. Heck, I didn't even believe I'd ever get to experience in my life. I've managed some great properties. I was lucky to manage another really large property before this. It was actually the owner's personal playground, before they turned me loose on this one. But then also I've been able to go up to Alberta this year and hunt. It was about half private land, half public land up there. I was able to spend a couple days already hunting primo ground in Minnesota. And I've spent a handful of days already hunting public land in Wisconsin. So to be able to get to experience the entire spectrum, for me, it's beyond a dream.
Awesome.
You get the best of the best, and you get to slug it out with everybody else. Yeah. And that is, I will stop now, but I realize how incredibly privileged I am. And frankly, I need to thank everybody who's listening, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be able to do this stuff.
Well, you've been educating hunters, including myself, for many years now, Steve, I don't want to make you feel old, but you have been. And one thing I want to do, well, let's get to some of these questions because we literally had almost 100 questions again today. Incredible response. Again, everybody who asked the question today is going to get next year's 2013 Deer and Deer Hunting Whitetail Calendar with Charlie Alsheimer's rut predictions in it. And I say this every week because a lot of people have been forgetting. When you submit your question, be sure to submit your address as well so we can get these out to you. But this is hot off the press. We have the new Whitetail Calendars 2013. Steve, I'm going to start off. You know the drill here, round robin. I'm going to go first. Brad's going to go, and we're going to try to blow through an hour here, which I know we're going to do very quickly. First question, fellow Wisconsinite, Travis Ernst. Travis wants to know, Steve, the past couple of weekends I've been hunting over a food plot. Every night he gets out, he has deer in the field, even when it's dark. What are some tips or advice that you can give him to help get out of his stand without spooking all the deer off the field?
I'm going to guess he's not in a position where he can have somebody come and drive him off for him. You know, that's
a good tip that I know. Why don't you explain that to people who don't understand what you're talking about there?
Well, if you can have somebody, if you can buddy up, or a wife or a girlfriend or a mom or a dad who's actually willing to drive out there to pick you up. I mean, they don't even have to pick you up. Just drive out to blow the field off. That's about the best scenario when you simply can't wait out these deer. Okay, the actual best scenario is to wait them out. Usually there's exceptions. There's plenty of times where they bed out in the food plot and they're not leaving. So unless you're planning on sleeping there, you can't get out. But the best scenario is just to simply wait them out. Wait until they get far enough away that you can get down and then backdoor out through the woods without them knowing that you're there. When that's not an option, you know, the next best scenario is to have somebody drive a vehicle out there to blow the deer off so you can get out. The next best scenario is to spook them off yourself, but not by climbing down the tree stand. Go ahead and I try, and this is either a rousing success or it can become a glorious disaster as well. But I'll oftentimes toss a stick out at a nearby deer and snort at the same time. You know, they have no clue what just happened. All they know is all of a sudden that doe or young buck is blowing out of there as fast as they can, and it typically clears the field. Another thing you can do is try to howl like a coyote and do it. Or even I've even used the shock calls for turkey hunting. You know, hit that a couple times hard, snort yourself, just go like that, and most times it clears the field for you. Now, as I said, every once in a while, though, that can turn into a glorious disaster with a whole field full of deer looking up at you as you're sitting there snorting. And I'll tell you, you want to feel humbled? You do that you have that happen to you a couple times, and my heavens, if that doesn't make you feel stupid, I don't know what does. But the worst thing you can do is climb down while the deer are watching you.
Yeah.
That's a good tip. There's kind of the order in which, you know, the best case, you wait them out until they get off far enough that you can slip down your stand and get out the woods somehow without them knowing. If that's impossible, you have somebody driving to get you. If that's impossible, make some type of disturbance that does not say human to spook them off. You know, people think, and I'll stop because I know you got a bunch of questions, but people think a deer snort is the kiss of death. I cannot tell you, even on public land, how many times I have heard a deer snort and been watching another deer that, you know, either just raises his head, looks around, goes back to doing what they're doing, or doesn't even do that. Mm-hmm. If deer freaked out every time they heard another deer snort, they'd be spending their whole life freaking out, because deer snort over a lot of different things, including squirrels, other deer, a skunk coming through. I mean, the list is virtually endless.
I agree.
Excellent information.
Hey, I got a next question. It's from Jeremy Rohrbacher from Michigan. It says, hey guys, I'm new to bow hunting. I was wondering, when it comes to the rut, would it be best to limit my number of hunts pre-rut and then hunt harder in the rut? Or what kind of strategy should I use?
It's very... Are these all supposed to be for me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't want to be stepping on toes here if they're not. It depends. It's situation specific. If he has a property that he can hunt that's moderate to light pressure, and he's able to actually pattern these deer, anytime you can pattern a deer, the best time to hunt them is right away, before their patterns change. If he's sitting there hammering public ground that he virtually never gets a chance to step on otherwise, hunt the rut. Hunt those last. I should preface that. Hunt the very beginning of what most people call the rut, which I refer to as the chase phase, when it's that 5 to 7 day window right before peak breeding really kicks off and the bucks are running around like crazy. So, I mean, if you want to, for me, I always want to play the odds. If I'm not familiar with the property, man, you cannot get a better time than that peak chase phase right before the rut, because bucks are running around like crazy. You put yourself in a funnel or a downwind side of a doe bedding area, you have no clue what could possibly show up, but odds are really high that something's going to. Now, if you have that buck patterned, then right now, I mean, as soon as you get a buck's pattern down, hunt that thing immediately, because there's countless reasons, pressure, changing food sources, the changing buck physiology, all result in those patterns changing. So very situation specific. I'm going to guess based on this question, he does not have the buck he wants to kill. He hasn't found a kink in his armor. He might not have even found it. So I would suggest in Michigan, get out there as much as you can, anywhere from Halloween on through November 5th or 6th, right around in there.
Some of the best tips that you've given, Steve, I think over the years and you've written several articles in Deer and Deer Hunting on this, especially when you go on like an outfitted hunt out of state. And I've used this tactic that you've written about at home when hunting new properties. You actually take, like, let's say you're hunting in Alberta or somewhere else, and you'll take that first day or two just to sit and observe and glass a certain, if you're hunting a field or an open area, even food plots, and then, like you say, for patterning to go in and hunt those deer right away, you kind of have a pretty good idea how to get in there commando, hang a stand, and hunt that deer. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, first off, I should say that I'm really lucky in that I can do things that most people can't. I mean, most people go on a outfitted hunt. They're going to the stand that the outfitter tells them to. And frankly, if you want to kill a deer, that's exactly what you do, because if that outfitter does not know what's going on here, nobody does. The ultimate in arrogance, in my opinion, is to believe you know more than the outfitter. I was really lucky that when I got started in this, I made the decision that I'm going to either do this the way I want to, or I'll stick to the really good day job I had. And what I really enjoy doing more than anything is playing the game, figuring out where can I set up so that I can intercept this mature whitetail or 5 does or a single doe in legal shooting light. So I would strongly suggest, if you're on an outfitted hunt, do not ask your outfitter to do this. He better know where to put you. He better know how to get you in and get you out of there perfectly safely. But yes, without a doubt, especially outside of the rut, if you're talking either end of the rut itself, but even during the rut when it comes to, you don't want to be kicking off all these does and stuff, watch the deer. They'll tell you how to set up to kill them. They'll tell you how you can get into that stand, how you can get out. And the best way to do that is simply to cut your odors just like you were hunting, set up at a distance with a spotting scope and watch them. Now, I don't know how else to put it except for the most overlooked, yet the most productive scouting strategy there is watch deer. They'll tell you what to do.
Yeah, let the deer show you how to hunt them. That's a great, simple tactic that works. Let's get the next question. I promised Ryan was going to get a question. He's getting the second question right here. Ryan Bauer. He had 4 questions. You already answered 3 of them. but this one I know you know pretty well, Steve. Have you ever put in a water hole? And if you have, how did you go about doing it? Maybe just a quick start to finish on how to create a man-made water source for whitetails.
The simplest, quickest, easiest way is to go down to Farm King, Fleet Farm, Farm and Fleet, whichever it is in your area, and pick yourself up a little plastic water trough. And go to a spot around the place that you already want to hunt that gets a little drainage, and bury the sucker to the lip. Just put in a stick so that any rodent that gets in there can climb out. Anybody can do something like that unless you're talking public ground. Public ground, I obviously can't tell you to do that because that might be illegal in some areas. But on private ground, anybody can do that. As far as if you want to put in a real long-term water hole, the problem with the advantage of doing what I just explained is virtually anybody can do it. And when you have rain that's going to collect water, and bingo, you have yourself a water source. The disadvantage is that, during dry periods, they tend to, because it doesn't have the depth, they tend to dry out much faster. Okay. If you really want to put in a water hole, bulldozer. It's going to depend on the type of soil you have. If you've got a thick, heavy clay soil, all you got to do is find a shaded spot that's going to collect a little bit of runoff. Get in there with a dozer. You can rent them fairly cheap, and you want to talk about feeling like a kid playing in a sandbox again. I love doing this, jumping on dozers. Dig it to about chest deep. It doesn't have to be overly huge. You're not creating a fish pond. All you're doing is you're creating a small pond that will collect a small watering hole. Dig it about chest deep. Put a berm along the side, that berm up the dirt along the side that the runoff would normally occur on, so it doesn't spill out over in that direction. And also, go ahead and try to position the dirt in a way that, all right, my stand is over here. I want the deer to come in broadside from this way. Now, when a person's doing any of this stuff, whether it's food plots, creating ponds, always think, how can I stack the odds that this deer coming in is going to give me the appropriate shot angle? Okay. Now, if it's a more sandy soil or really rocky soil, at that point, you need to line. After you dig it out, you actually need to put a liner down to help hold the moisture. But it's really, in both cases, whether you're talking actually going out with a bulldozer and creating these things, and at the same time have a plan. Go ahead and put in a couple small isolated food plots back, 50 to 100 yards off the main food source between their bedding areas where you can get in and out if you can't tell. I'm trying to talk quick so we can get through a bunch of these. But create some food plots at the same time. Pair up that pond with a food plot. But in either case, just find that low spot where you're naturally going to collect water.
The one thing I think that you said that a lot of people don't really consider, Steve, and you're right on the money, is think how that deer is going to react and think where you're going to put your stand before you do the work. And I can tell you this firsthand, when I started doing food plots 20 years ago, man, I just picked the best soil that I had. I didn't care about the tree. And you learn quickly when you're watching all your deer go to a spot where you can't really hunt them very easily that you just made a big mistake.
Well, and frankly, God bless mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how you learn.
Exactly. I mean, I learned so much more from falling on my face than I ever learned from when I accidentally succeed. So don't be afraid to go. I think I'll try to keep this brief, but I think that's one of the bigger problems we have with hunting today is that people aren't going out and experimenting. They're not going out and falling on their face. We're blessed that this is how you kill deer. We have a formula laid out for us. But don't be afraid to deviate. Be creative. Make mistakes. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? It didn't work, but I learned a valuable lesson.
Yeah, I agree. My daughter, I got to tell a quick little funny story. My daughter now works at Fleet Farm, which, if you're not familiar with it, it is a farming store, but they have hunting supplies. And she's a checkout girl, and she came up to me last Friday, and she goes, Dad, isn't it late for people to buy food plot seed? And I just started laughing. I was like, yes, it is.
Up here it is, yeah.
They're going to learn a valuable lesson in Wisconsin.
Unless they're in Alabama or
Them and salt blocks, she said, the trophy rock. So it was kind of funny. Hey, I got a question for you, Steve. It's from Dale Yakubowski from PA. And it's actually a pretty good question. He asks, when hunting pre-rut, I can't seem to pinpoint which food source the mature deer will hit in the afternoon and evenings. Is there any science that shows what food deer prefer and why and when several are available? And he just goes on, it's a long question, but he says, you know, the farm that he has corn, soybeans, had alfalfa, it's got apple trees on, oaks, so he's really wondering how you concentrate on a food source.
Well, first off, that is an exceptionally good question because there isn't an answer to it. Or there isn't a specific cut and dried answer. In my experience, every food source out there, it has a peak desirability state. And that peak desirability state is based partially on the food source itself, you know, like acorns. Acorns, if they're not on the ground and mature, well, you know what, if they're still up in the trees, they're not very desirable because the deer can't get to it. But that peak desirability state is also based on what else is available in the area. Now, so you look at an example I use so often, you look at soybeans. They actually have two peak desirability states, in my opinion. First, it's the green leaves during the summer months, and a great trick is to plant them in July and pray for rain, because then you're going to have green soybeans during early bow season, and well, you aren't going to be able to keep the deer out of them, because they're going to be the only soybeans in the area that are still green. But then as their leaves yellow, all of a sudden, those soybeans, you notice the deer they back off them hard because they don't want to eat the dead leaves. The soybean pods aren't quite dry yet, and frankly, you know, there's a lot of things. My own experience, deer would really rather eat lush, green, growing plants than they would dried soybeans or dried corn. Now, and at the same time, you typically have your apple trees. The apples on them are maturing and they're starting to drop down to the ground. And you have your acorns dropping, so the deer back way off of the soybeans. Okay. Now, the soybeans are dried, but the deer aren't hitting them that hard, but now you get later in the season, the acorns are starting to get cleaned up. You know, there's been 3 or 4 hard frosts, so that alfalfa field, which is a really great draw early in the season, has now been frosted on hard a couple times. I don't know if it's the taste that taints on it. I know the protein level drops slightly, so they're not that interested in the greens anymore because they've all had hard frost, the grasses and the clovers and the alfalfas. All of a sudden, those hard soybeans, they haven't changed, but because they don't have all these other options, all of a sudden, man, look at the deer out in that soybean field. So it's a combination of several factors, and another factor I'd throw in there as well is how much of it is there in the area. I love a good steak. I absolutely love it. That, and as much as I hate to admit it, pepperoni pizza are probably my 2 favorite foods, and explains why I'm, absolutely ripped. I'm being sarcastic. But anyway, I love those 2 foods, but if I ate them every single day, I'd get real sick of them. So I believe that deer, to an extent, have the same tendency. They like variety in their diet. Okay. If I have one isolated food source that there isn't a bunch of in the area, I'm going to hunt that more often, just because even though it might not be the favorite food out in the area, I've got one 10-acre soybean field surrounded by hundreds of acres of alfalfa and corn and acorns all over the place. Well, yeah, but those deer are going to get sick of those. They're going to stop. They might not be feeding on that soybean field as much as on these others, but when they feed here, dang it, I'm going to shoot them because they're going to be concentrated. All that said, trying to answer the question trying to answer what he's really getting at, with keeping all that in mind, acorns from white oaks, they're real tough to beat.
They are tough to beat, especially when you have an abundance of them.
Same with apples.
Yeah.
When they're dropping, they're real hard to beat. Alfalfa is a great early season crop. But once, as a matter of fact, I mean, as far as crops that can be planted, it's about the best early season crop there is. But once you get a couple frosts, you know, they tend to back off the alfalfa.
Yeah.
Clover's another good workhorse of a crop. They'll actually keep hammering that after a couple frosts for some reason. But it's not as desirable as anything I've just mentioned in general. Soybeans are awesome while they're green, but then after they brown, you got to wait for the pods, the individual beans to actually dry out, and they tend to be a more late October, early November the deer start coming back to them harder. Same with corn. Corn actually, when it's in the green state, deer eat a lot more corn than a person gives them credit for. But once it starts to get more mature, you know, again, they tend to wait until the corn kernels themselves are harder, ends up being more of a cold weather crop.
Yeah.
And they instinctively know that they need that protein. So that's some good stuff. Steve, we only have time for a couple more questions. I wanted to get one in here from Mark Mason from Florida. And this, you know, Mark's hunting public land in Florida, but this can apply just about anywhere. His question, he's looking for strategies to get him the best odds at harvesting a mature buck, Mark writes. He said he's located at a 9-point where he's going to be hunting, and he wants to know if, now he's talking there in his particular area, their rut has not kicked in yet. And he said, should he sit all day, dark to dark? Is that a good strategy? And I know you have some thoughts on this.
Again, it depends on where you're setting up. If I'm setting up on what I believe their food source is, even within the woods, you know what, chances are he's not going to be coming out to that food source at noon. That's not in my experience. Everybody has different ways of hunting that works best for them. For me, on public land or any heavily hunted deer, but especially on just about every public ground I step foot on, what I strive to do is hunt where absolutely no one else is. Because that buck, to reach maturity on a heavily hunted piece of ground, trust me when I say he's found that spot. He's found that spot where no one else goes to. It might be because it's so nasty thick that you got to crawl in there on your hands and knees. It might be because you have to throw on hip waders or jump in a canoe to get there, or in some cases, and it's not going to be the case probably down in Florida, but you have to absolutely kill yourself to get up that ridge. Okay, that's where I want to set up, and in those positions, those places, these deer, it's like a sanctuary for them. They do feel much safer moving at 11 o'clock than they ever would in those areas that other people are hunting. It's in that situation, it is a great plan to hunt all day. Also, tend to time your hunts for when the other hunters are not out there. You know, midday mornings, for example, midweek mornings are a lot better time to be hunting that public land than it is Saturday afternoon. You know, and lastly, let me throw out, the nastier the weather, the better. Now, I have no doubt in my mind that whitetails can be trained just like your dog at home, and we have trained them that when the mature ones I'm talking now, that, you know what, when it's nasty, nasty weather, we're not out here. And sure, those deer down in that place that I manage down in Illinois, in nasty weather, they're not moving because they don't have to. But that heavily hunted buck, he's learned that nasty weather, oh heck, I'm going to get up on my feet and I'm going to move because I got this place to myself. Hope that helps a little
Perfect.
bit.
That's the same advice I would have given you. We've got one more question and then we got to go. But Brad,
hey, this one's kind of interesting because it's from, it just says Deborah. It doesn't give me the last name, but she asked, this unusually cold weather, must be up here in the Midwest, really has thrown a wrench in the thing. It seems like the bucks are out, even mature bucks chasing does, neck swollen. There's a lot more sign. Why do you think it's the way it is? Can you explain?
That is a tremendously good question. I've noticed the exact same thing. Everything. I'd say about 20% of the bucks. And I would back up a second here. I also think part of it is the unbelievably mild winter we had as well. But I would say 20% of the bucks, even their velvet shedding, was bumped up a couple weeks. I'm seeing scrapes like I've never seen before in September. I know we're in October now, but in September, I mean, you always see a handful of scrapes in September. They're typically done by your more mature bucks. Heck, I'm watching immature bucks, yearlings, out there making scrapes in September this year. I think part of it is the cold, but I think part of it was, I mean, I don't want to, you can say whatever you want about the cause and stuff, but I do believe, and I know this is going to sound like an oxymoron after asking about how this unseasonably cold weather, but I believe that for whatever reason we are in a warmer than we should be. I'm trying not to get political here and say global warming.
Trying not to say global warming, but
yeah, but I'm sorry. If you don't buy global warming, you aren't paying any attention. You know, I mean, you can argue the cause, but our environment is changing.
The climate's changing. It is,
and it's throwing things into a tither. I've got pictures of well, Brad actually saw a bunch of pictures of the buck. This 10-point with a split G2 actually dogging a doe in August. I mean, this isn't an immature bucks I never pay attention to because they're stupid. They don't know what they're doing. This is at least a 4.5-year-old buck, and he's got his nose out, nose stuck up, neck stuck straight out, and I got 6 pictures of him chasing a doe around in a circle. Now, I don't have a good answer. I think, as I said, I think part of it was because of the extremely mild winter, went ahead and accelerated everything this year. And the other part is cold weather. It's as long as it's not too brutally extreme, cold weather is a massive incentive to get these bucks up and doing stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you this from youth deer season, because I've been doing it for the last 5 years. Every single weekend it's been like 80 degrees, and the deer movement has been, nil. We've struggled just to show the kids bucks. And this year it was cool. There are deer everywhere. We saw 14 different bucks. So there you go. I mean, just the weather.
Yeah. Well, Steve, we run out of time today, but I want to thank you again. It's always a pleasure having you on, especially to get your insights. I learn something every time. I know Brad does too, and I hope all the Deer Talk Now listeners did too. But thanks again, Steve, for joining us today.
As I said, not to sound too overly cheesy, but I want to say thanks to your listeners. I have never forgotten that I am exceptionally lucky, and if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be able to do this. So anytime you want, you got me.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
Steve.
you a lot.
Good luck out there.
You guys take care.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Brad, that's awesome. The one thing that gets me excited with Steve is not only talking about deer hunting, but you see those pictures. Oh. He has killed some incredible bucks over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he knows what he's doing, and what's fun when you get to hunt with him. It's unfortunately not everybody gets to, but you're going to get to, and I've been there. He really does. It's like when you look at the stand, if you don't know why it's there, ask him. I mean, he'll tell you. Why do you think it's there? You might get that question back, but you're always learning something.
Always learning.
That's the beauty of it.
And what's important about that is it doesn't have to be Brad Rocks or Steve Bartella or even Charlie Alsheimer. What I always tell guys, because this is how I learned, there's always somebody in your camp. It's an uncle, it's a friend, it's a brother, somebody who seems to be more successful than everybody else, who seems to have more experience than everybody else. I always say just absorb it all, because those are the people that you learn from. Yeah. In our case, you get to hunt with Steve, you learn, and why does he have his stand there? Yeah. And that's like when I grew up hunting, there was one of my cousins, he was always killing big deer. And instead of just being jealous of him, went out there and say he always hung his stand a little bit higher than everybody else's. He was always a little bit farther back in the woods than everybody else. And those are the types of guys you learn stuff from. And Steve, I would just, he's obviously at the top of that list. Somebody like that you can learn from.
Hey, one time I remember sitting in the stand and I was thinking, God, if this was mine, I would actually even put a little food plot over here. And then afterwards I'm asking, I was like, well, did you ever think about doing that? Yeah, I tried. It didn't grow because it was so dry a year ago. So, I mean, even where I thought I had something over him, yeah, he had already tried it.
Already figured it out, yeah. All right, well, that's it for today. I want to make sure everybody knows that we still have the sale at Shop Deer. Be sure to go on there today. Smokies, get yourself a bottle of Smokies. We have more in stock, so you can get out there and make a mock scrape right now. This is the pre-orbital lure that's up there. You can order it right there on shopdeerhunting.com, or you can call the toll-free number if you don't want to give your credit card information online. You get 10% off your order today. We also have brand new in the store, the interdigital buck lure. This is real interdigital lure from one specific mature buck. It's bottled fresh, straight to your door. You only need about 6 or 10 drops of this stuff in a scrape. So you can use this in conjunction with pre-orbital. You put the interdigital actually in the scrape, use the pre-orbital on the licking branch. You're going to have mock scrapes to die for. I mean, those deer are going to rip them up if you have any buck activity on your land whatsoever. 10% off today if you mention Deer Talk. We also have the can cookers, the special Deer and Deer Hunting can cookers. It comes with a Deer and Deer Hunting logo on it. Get one for your deer hunting camp. You're going to be the star chef, and it doesn't take much to do it.
Offer with that is they got the free rack on the bottom of that, so no matter where you buy it from right now, you cannot get that rack unless you purchase it. When you purchase ours, you're going to get a free rack from the bottom.
That's about a $15 value.
Absolutely,
so that's a pretty neat deal. Also, free Deer and Deer Hunting Season 7 DVDs. That's with any $50 purchase or more. You're going to get a free 11 episode, all episodes from last year, Deer and Deer Hunting TV, our favorite season of all time so far until after this year's over. But you're going to get that DVD free. And one last item, we have the fawn mamas and the regular doe mama calls in the store. This is a call you're going to want with you when you go hunting right now, all the way through the rut. Even if you're hunting in the south, you can pick this up. You're going to be hunting in December, January if you're in Alabama or Mississippi or Georgia or Texas. Great call. We'll call in bucks, does, deer of all ages. It's a very good call to have.
Destination Whitetail.
Destination Whitetail. Thank you, Tyler. Tonight.
Is it a new show tonight, Tyler?
Yes, it's Wisconsin.
Oh, it's a Wisconsin show. Well, we did something a little bit different this year. It's on Sportsman's Channel. What we did is we did what we call the split season. So we ran the first 7 shows and then reran those again. So they're brand new shows. This one is Destination Wisconsin. If you're not from Wisconsin or anywhere from the Midwest, it is an interesting show. You're going to go ahead and love it. Absolutely. Yep. So go ahead and tune in tonight.
Tonight, Sportsman's Channel, Destination Whitetail. That's it. Another hour packed full of deer hunting. I can't get enough of it. Again, for Brad Rux, I'm Dan Schmidt. Join us next week Wednesday at noon. Thanks for watching Deer Talk Now.